Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the video I've been most excited about since I started doing this. Besides my first one, obviously. Jason's much better looking than either of these, but we'll move on from there. To my right, we have Lincoln, who most of you know already as my principal broker, and to my left is Marty Weil. He is also a realtor in our office, and you're thinking, well, I thought this was going to be for sale by owner versus realtor. It is. Here's the thing. I reached out to a couple of people that were gung-ho about for sale by owner, and the response I got, one, was very hostile about it. Two, they didn't use language that I thought was going to be appropriate for a good debate conversation. I wanted to make sure that this conversation was formed in an aspect where you're getting information, not versus I hate realtors or I hate for sale by owners. I want it to be a conversation. So that's why I chose to go with these two to do it. Now, Lincoln, 15 years in the business. Marty, on the other hand, 33 years in the business. He's going to know the ins and outs of being an owner of a house, and he knows the arguments for sale by owner. That's why I chose him. He's a nice guy. So he's not going to be, yeah. So we're going to form this in a conversation, and in this conversation, Lincoln's going to play the realtor. Marty's going to play the owner of a home who wants to sell it on his own, and we're going to hit the points that I most hear and that we most hear as realtors hear from for sale by owners and why not to use a realtor. So that being said, we're going to get this conversation going. Lincoln, go ahead and get started with, I guess we could start with the main point, the commission. So there you go. It's between these two now.
Well, Marty, hey, thank you for your time today. Appreciate you giving me the call back and the opportunity to talk to you. I know that you have shared that you would like to be selling your house for sale by owner, and I totally understand that. I was hoping you could just give me some insight as to why you want to do that.
Well, in this market today, it's
Sorry, guys. I thought I shut off my phone. There we go.
a little Harry Potter there.
Yeah. I am Harry Potter, not. Go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
So in this market, it just over the last several years, it just seems like anybody can sell ice to an Eskimo. It seems like it'd be pretty doggone easy. So why would I want to pay a realtor commission on top? I could sell it. I'm gonna have to pay you. I gotta pay off the loan, and I want to make this much. So I have a pretty good idea what my house is worth. I mean, gee whiz, all you guys really do nowadays is just put it on the internet. I can do that. I've got on my phone, just ring there. I can go take pictures of the house myself and post it on the internet. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in the advent of a market like this, where things are seemingly moving quickly, the exposure question can be solved by an owner for sure. I think our value used to be in the exposure and the access, and I think our value now has shifted somewhat from that to professional marketing and really enhancing the marketing of a property, and then also advising you during the process. So I totally agree that you can do that, but I would say, again, regarding just the when you're putting a house on the market, I mean, one of the things I know that we would commit is a professional photo shoot that we would pay for. It's not going to be out of your pocket. We would look at professional staging, or at least a design consultant to come in and give us some advice on different design ideas. Again, that would be a fee that I would absorb. And then when it comes to the internet, absolutely putting your home on all the Zillow platform and Redfin, very important for an exposure. That's going to get you out to the public. But for the 8,000 to 9,000 realtors that are in the Portland metro area, most of us are going to be looking in the RMLS system. So if I have a buyer that's looking for a property and they don't want to be looking themselves, that's where I'm going to go. That's a piece you're going to miss, is not having it in the RMLS system. So again, and looking at the recent data, 95% of millennials do want representation. So they do want to have a buyer, they do want to have a realtor representing them when they're purchasing a home. The commission is a great point as well. I will say, typically most, when you for sale by owner, most buyers are going to be represented, so you are going to have a potential co-op with a buyer's agent, and that's going to be at 2.5%.
What do you mean by co-op?
Well, that means you're going to be co-oping, you're going to be cooperating with a buyer's agent that buyer brings. So you may find a buyer that's unrepresented, but they're pretty infrequent. because again, most purchasers, especially if they're first timers, they do like having that representation. So you're going to typically be spending 2.5% on a commission anyway. So yeah, you might save the 2.5% on the listing side, but you are not. It's not like it's going to be free to sell it on your own from a commission standpoint.
2 points there I really want to jump in real quick. One, Zillow and Redfin get close to 95% of all their listings from the RMLS. So as a realtor, when we put in the RMLS, it automatically goes out to all of those websites at once. Versus if you're doing it by yourself, you do each one individually. They don't pull from each other.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind. And then also, my question becomes at this point, well, it's not my responsibility to pay the buyer's agent. Why can't the buyer do that?
Well, there's definitely situations where a buyer can do that, but that is definitely something that the expectation set from the front. A buyer's not expecting that. So if you lay down that the buyer's now going to have to pay 2.5% of $400,000 to the buyer's agent, that's, again, that's probably not a real good selling point for that buyer with that particular home. They might say, hey, we'll just go to that house that's listed by an agent who's co-oping at 2.5%. And so again, from a buyer pool's perspective, I think you do lose potential buyer pool if you are not co-oping with a buyer's agent.
Now, I've had agents in the past tell me, well, gee whiz, Marty, we'll be showing your house, and I can get away from work, I can go show the house. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, again, if you're up to that task, that's fantastic if you have that ability. But I do know if you are listed, that is one of the values of having me or somebody else list your home is we would be scheduling those showings. We would be showing up for those showings if you wanted us to. But again, we would have the lockbox on the home for access, so the buyer's agent could get in. We're going to get an email every time that lockbox is accessed. So if you have an issue with security, we're going to know who showed it at what time. So again, it really does make it convenient to just have it in the RMLS system where I'm the middle person. I'm setting up the showings, saying yes or no to that agent, and then you don't have people just knocking on your door randomly either during dinner time saying, hey, I saw your for sale by owner sign, I wanted to show your house, and it's 6:30 and you're sitting down with your family. So I believe we add value in just the convenience factor as well, setting up the showings, again, security, knowing who's been in the property, and what time they were there.
Well, that makes sense, I guess, because I have heard that, houses could be showed 10, 15, 20 times a day, and that would be kind of tough to come home from work every time, let the dog out and take care of all that stuff. So, yeah, that's a valid point. I hear agents talking about the paperwork that's involved, and it seems pretty simple. Like I could just go get my own form, Stephen Neff's form, to write up the deal with the buyer. So, what would be wrong with that?
Again, if you've been through the buying and selling process, you might feel like I'm pretty savvy or it's pretty intuitive. I understand how these documents work, or I know how the workflow or the process goes. But I will say this: in our current market, the sales agreement is now 11 pages long, and not that long ago it was about a half a page to a page. So there is a complexity now to a transaction that didn't used to be there. So again, there's pieces to the market where yes, from an exposure standpoint, maybe it is easier to just list it on your own. But I believe part of our value comes in managing and advising you through the complexity of the actual transaction. So there's a myriad of contingencies for a buyer during the transaction. So if you are fluent with those and you know the timetables for those 4 or 5 contingencies that a buyer has, then I understand. Maybe you are in a good position to try it on your own. But if you're not familiar with those 4 or 5 contingencies, and on the 5 days before closing that buyer decides to terminate, obviously that's not going to be beneficial for you. That might upset you, but again, that there's nothing you can really do about it.
Well, you say there's nothing I can do about it. Buyer puts earnest money down, and you say all these contingencies they have. I mean, if they back out, I'll just get their earnest money and sell it to somebody else.
Yeah, well, earnest money, now again, when that's deposited, that's going to go into a neutral escrow account, and it's not going to be directly deposited into your account immediately. And so if the buyer has followed the rules and they are within their legal rights for that earnest money, then they're going to get that back, and you're going to be left, having to go back on the market. So, for instance, property disclosures. Have you filled out property disclosures for that particular buyer?
What are those?
Well, property disclosures can be a 7-page document where you're going to fill out to the best of your ability what you know about the property. Have there been some issues with the property? If so, have those been remediated? And if they have, when were they remediated and how were they done? You are required to provide those for a buyer, and they need to sign off on those. And they have a certain window where they can terminate a transaction based on the property disclosures. And again, if that's something you're aware of, fantastic. But if you're not, or you think, hey, my house is in great shape, I've done it all myself, I've maintained it, I don't need to fill out disclosures, you have now given that buyer a contingency, that you've given them an out all the way through closing. So maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't. But if you don't provide property disclosures, that buyer can walk out on you a day before closing. And again, they're within their legal rights, and you're going to be out. You're not even going to get their earnest money. So.
Now, you have talked in the past, or other agents have, as far as negotiations. I've sold cars before, so negotiating, that's pretty simple. So what do you guys mean that you bring to the table, your negotiating ability?
Sure. Well, I think that's a fair question, and I think there's a lot of people who are probably really good negotiators. Again, I think the value we're going to bring is we're going to try to really do an in-depth look at that particular property. We're going to look at obviously recent comps, sold properties, and but we're not just going to look at the price and the price per square foot. I think that's a very poor way to price a home. We're going to look at things like floor plan. We're going to look at maybe your house has a more choppy floor plan versus comparable 1, comparable 2 that have a more open plan, which most buyers prefer these days. Maybe you're a true 4-bedroom home, but maybe the comps are a 4-bed and a bonus, which a lot of families are looking for. Maybe you're a subdivision where half goes to a certain school, half goes to another. So there's going to be maybe the different school ratings are going to come into effect. Potentially maybe your house is back into a major road and the comparables aren't. So again, there's going to be a value there. So just to look at comps strictly on Zillow or even in the RMLS and go, well, that sold for $475. My house is far superior to that, so I want to go on at $550, isn't necessarily a good pricing strategy. So we're going to have a conversation about it. It's a two-way street. Obviously, your goals are my goals. I want to sell your house for the most dollar in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of surprises. That's going to be the value I hope to bring to you. But it's going to be a conversation, and I hope when I am able to show you what's been going on in the market, where things are trending, what the buyer pool is like, maybe we can come to a decision on that makes sense.
You talk about pricing, but I can go online. I go on Zillow, truly, I can get pricing from there. Besides, if I have to pay you again, and I owe this much, I want a lot for my house because it's the best house on the block in the neighborhood.
Sure. Yeah, I love the digital platforms. I think Zillow is great. Redfin's great. Again, they're going to give you an estimate or a price estimate, and they're going to base it on a lot of the sold properties. They're not necessarily going to know the nuances of each property. So again, your property, maybe it's really tricked out, and maybe the couple of prior comps that they're basing their estimate on were a little bit older and outdated. Maybe you've put in the quartz countertops and you've got nice refinished hardwood floors, and you've got the vinyl windows and all these upgrades. You've redone the master bath. So again, you might even be shortchanging yourself potentially. Maybe you're worth more than you think you are because of what you've done to the property. And then of course the opposite is potentially there too. Maybe the comparables are really dialed in. Who knows? Maybe you're on a busy street in the same subdivision, but one of the comps is on a cul-de-sac, something like that. Again, that's going to affect value. So this estimate I think it's a good place to start. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a bad place to kind of just have a baseline. But I think the stats would say Zillow is going to be within around 4 to 5%. either direction. So that's a fairly big range if you're dealing at 3, 4, 500,000. So I would want to hone that in a little bit, tighten that up, and really get a price where we can both really feel good about it going forward, than just kind of throwing it out there because the neighbor sold a year ago at this particular price. And that's the other piece. We want to look at market trends. Recently we saw a big drop in the last few weeks in interest rates, so it brought maybe a new buyer pool into the marketplace, and now rates in the last few days have ticked back up. So again, part of our value is bringing you an insight to what's going on in the market, so that you may or may not have. Maybe
I do
you
want to
have.
interject one thing in here, and this is a touchy subject for everybody to address. People love their homes, especially if you raise your family in it. You get emotional about your home. You start seeing notches in the wall from where the kids grew up and stuff like that. An advantage a realtor has is they can come at it from a very analytical standpoint, as to where if you love your home, you're coming at it from a very emotional standpoint. We're not trying to hurt your feelings, but your home is worth $1 million to you, but it's worth $300,000 to somebody else, and that might be something else to consider when you want to sell your house. Am I really emotionally invested in my home? Am I going to be able to accept when people come in and criticize my home? Because when you're showing the house, they're going to criticize you. They're going to criticize the wall color. They're going to criticize the carpets or the floors or the kitchen, and they're going to criticize. If you have pictures up, they're going to criticize those. It's a very eye-opening experience when you're showing a home, and most things that come out of people's mouth, at least in my experience, both of you have way more experience, they vocalize the negatives more so than the positives, almost without fail. And that's something to consider. Are you emotionally ready to do that, to take on that when you're showing your home? It's just a thought to consider. It's not maybe a main thought, but it's just something to really think about when you're thinking about selling your house, I think, is what emotional investment do you have in your home? Are you really willing to hear those things about your family and your home and those other things, where a realtor, they're working for you and they like you, but they're not emotionally invested in your home.
Well, there's a difference between price and value. You can price a home or anything in life at whatever you want. Value is what a particular buyer is going to pay. So we have to take that into mind too. And again, hopefully we can kind of work through some of those cumbersome things and work through some of the complexities of it. And again, come to a place where, it needs to meet your goals. And if your goal is to move on and upgrade to a new house or downsize, whatever it is, we're going to work together on trying to do that. But so we're not looking at it from an adversarial perspective. Agents there's not a retainer. We don't get paid until it closes either. So the reality is, both of us have it. We do have the goal of trying to get it closed, and we're going to look out for your best interest as well. So we're going to be your advocate. Most likely, the buyer is going to have an advocate, somebody advocating for them. So maybe you want to have someone looking out for you. And I can say this, there's going to be buyer's agents who are going to, look at potential, some for sale by owners, and say, hey, I'm going to, I know all the little rules and all the little contingency timelines, and I'm going to take great advantage of this person, and I'm going to do whatever I can to try to, pin them down or put them in a corner. Now, again, that's not the mindset of all agents out there, but there are some. So I would want to have somebody who's, has knowledge of those same timelines and same rules and regulations, advocating on my behalf. So,
hey, Lincoln, again, you had mentioned earlier about it seems like your buyer's got all these rights on the earnest money grant. Well, where's my rights as a seller in the earnest money grant? How do you protect me more so than I would if I just dealt with it as a for sale by owner?
That is a great question.
it's a good question, and I would say it's hard to quantify, but I think it's fair to say 95% of the Oregon State sales agreement benefits the buyer. Again, the buyer has a lot of outs available to them, and so for me as your agent, I want the clock to start as quickly as possible. So again, when it comes to, say, the property disclosure contingency, I want to get those disclosures over to that buyer's agent as quickly as I can, get them signed off, so we can, again, remove that contingency from the table. There's a contingency, an inspection contingency. Well, I want to make sure that we get that buyer's agent is diligently getting those inspections on the schedule and they're working through that and getting us, whatever kind of, repairs they're going to request. And then we're going to get into those negotiations. So again, there's going to be negotiations throughout the process. We're going to negotiate on the front end on price. So maybe we determine a price there, but then we potentially are going to negotiate again on inspections. And then what happens if an appraisal comes in lower? What do we do then? So we're going to, that's going to be another time to negotiate. So again, there's potential potholes in the process that I think it's vital to have someone advocating for your rights and protecting you than, again, this buyer's agent who's going to try to use every little advantage they can for their particular client.
So two things. One, what's the worst thing that can happen to a buyer if they back out? And then two, what happens if I don't like the buyer and I want to get out of the deal? What happens then?
Well, I can tell you this, as a seller, you don't have a whole lot of contingencies. There's not a seller's remorse. There's not a I don't like this person clause. Again, once you've signed to accept that offer, you're pretty locked into that transaction. There's not a whole lot of options for you as the seller like the buyer would have. So, that's the other piece to it too. So you want to make sure that you're satisfied with what's happening, you're satisfied with the price, you're satisfied with the terms of the offer, and before you decide to move forward.
Okay. So we get into a transaction, we're getting a little bit further along in the transaction, and they go through their inspection. They're not going to need to do any repairs, but let's just say hypothetically they come up with something. Can I just cut them a check at closing and just give them a credit and call it good?
Well, there's opportunities. There's a bunch of options there. You could give them a potential credit toward their closing costs. That's an option. You could reduce the price potentially, but there's going to be certain buyers who maybe they're moving into a home and cash is tight, and they don't have that amount of money to take care of those repairs. So again, cutting the price $7,000 isn't necessarily going to do much for them, because that $7,000 over 30 years is only going to be a few bucks a month. But they may not have 10 grand in cash to take care of those repairs right away. So they may want those repairs. Then you're going to get into you're going to get lender required repairs. So a lender is going to have an appraiser come out. An appraiser is going to look at that property, put a value on it, and then they're going to have what we call funding conditions. And then those have to be done before closing. So if that appraiser comes out and has a list of 1 or 2 or 3 items that they're going to require in order for that lender to fund the loan, then you're on the hook to take care of those or figure it out with that buyer before closing.
Okay. So, you bring up some real good points of why we'd want to use an agent. You talked about the fee a little bit. Gee whiz, like I said back in the beginning, anybody can sell ice to an Eskimo, but I could see reasons behind it. Is there anything else that you can think of that I should know as far as why I should go with you as a listing agent?
Yeah, again, I think the commission piece is a valid one. There's no question about it. But again, I think, the reality is, just from if I can help and be a part of negotiating that upfront price, negotiating repairs, a repair addendum that you would receive is not a to-do list for you. That is a negotiable time. It's not like you just have to sign off on that. We have some ability to negotiate there. Working through the process, again, just the convenience factor of from the very outset of marketing and setting up showings, then we get into an offer and walking through that 30 to 40 day closing period and kind of giving you an idea what that looks like, navigating it for you, and you get to the end of it, and hopefully it's been a good experience for you. You haven't been inconvenienced too much. So I do look at a lot of our value is just walking and navigating clients through the process and giving them an idea of what the next steps are, giving them an idea of what the buyer has contingency wise, and setting the table and giving realistic expectations. So to me, it's more than just marketing. It's more than just pricing. It's more than just some of the pre-launch stuff like that. I'll help pay for, whether that's photography, staging, things like that. But it really is, it's getting into that process and navigating it, and hopefully protecting you and looking for you. There are times where let's just say, for instance, we have an issue with a roof. and the buyer wants that done before closing. Okay, well, maybe one option for us would be, okay, we're willing to take that on, or we're willing to split the roof with you and get it completed before closing, but we're going to ask you now to make that earnest money that you have put up non-refundable, because we want to have you put some skin in the game. Because the reality is, if we do that roof for you before closing, and we've put out all that money, and you still are able to terminate, that doesn't look good for us when we've put this new roof on, outlaid that money, we're ready to close, and you terminate. Now we've got nothing to show for it. We've got this beautiful new roof for a new owner that we're never going to get to enjoy.
So it makes that buyer more vested in the transaction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we want them to have some skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So again, those types of things, that's hopefully a value I can bring to you is, hey, yeah, maybe we have to agree to taking care of this roof or whatever, the crawl space, whatever it is, but let's get some skin in the game from the buyer. So again, they're not just taking advantage of us. Let's put that 1% of earnest money on the line and make that non-refundable. So if they do walk away, at least you're going to get that $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, and we're going to go back on the market. And now the roof is done. So again.
So I guess the final thing is the price. I mean, on average, would you say that for sale by owners can sell their house for just as much as the real estate agent could, or do realtors typically get more percentage for the sales price?
Well, typically realtors are going to be able to get more for the property than a for sale by owner. And again, I think part of that is just having market knowledge, having access to the RMLS previous listings, having the access to really go a little bit deeper, see what, because sometimes a home, it will look like in Zillow that maybe it sold for $475. But we don't know that maybe that seller made a concession. Maybe they gave them a credit for $10,000 toward their closing cost. So really that seller netted $465. We wouldn't necessarily know that unless we had an agent who could look into the private comments in the RMLS and see that. Or perhaps we could call that previous agent and say, hey, were there any concessions for repairs, things like that. So we don't know. Maybe that house could have sold for a lot more, but they cut the price $20,000 in lieu of repairs. So, again, and I think it comes down to a good agent is going to do their due diligence, do their homework, come up with a price range, and work with you, because I want to work with you. I want to work with your goals, and I want to make this a beneficial experience for you as well. But the reality is sometimes you can go too high, and then you miss the market, and then we're just dropping the price, and we're chasing the market. Or sometimes you might be too low, and you just don't know that. Especially in this market, we're seeing a lot of properties get bid up, multiple offer situations. So that's I don't want you to undersell your property either. So
everything that we went over today is all very important. But at the end of the day, having somebody advocate for you in anything that you're not educated in is always going to be the better road. You don't go to court without a lawyer. You're not letting your neighbor perform surgery on you. There's a reason people are trained to do what they do. Between these two, there's 48 years of experience sitting in this room right now. I'm not including myself because I don't have their experience at all. The thing to remember is
you're not even that old.
Yeah, I'm older than that. I am. I'm 45. Oh, right. No, 48. Yeah, no, I'm not. All right.
See?
I'm younger than something.
Underselling yourself.
The point I want to do this, and the whole reason I want to do it is if you want to sell your house on your own, then by all means do it. Just understand the risks involved. Chances are you're going to miss out on something key. Everybody's smart. Everybody thinks they're smart. And you might be, but you don't know everything. Yeah, you can use a lawyer to do forms and stuff like that, but you're paying them most likely by the hour, and every time a form needs to be changed, you're going to pay them again. Or you can have a realtor advocating for you instead of just filling out the paperwork, and you're not paying them every time you make a phone call. There's a lot of avenues going around, but most realtors, especially the ones that I've had the pleasure of working with, truly care about their clients and want to get what's best for their clients. They're not out to make a buck. Yes, this is how we earn our living, but taking care of our clients is always the most important thing. I have never heard one realtor say, oh yeah, I just took on this client because I can make a lot of money off of him. Never once. I've never heard anybody discuss money other than the fact of how to price a home. And that's it. That's all we do. We just want to take care of our clients. That's why we do it. Marty's been doing this for 33 years. You think if he was just a money-hungry, greedy guy that he'd be doing this for 33 years and be successful?
I might have hair.
What's that?
I might have hair.
That's true. You might still have hair.
I probably care too much.
You know, and Lincoln, 15 years. He takes time out, as a managing broker, he takes time out of his day to train other realtors in the proper way to take care of their clients. That's the majority of his day. He can be making way more money not running a brokerage. I just want to get the point out there that realtors do care about their clients. We do advocate for our clients, and it's not all about money. So,
I will say this. I will say most of the agents, at least in this particular office, myself included, we have built businesses that are based on repeat clients and their referrals. So again, if our intent was just to get to closing and get a check, then that's one thing. And you were disappointed with us, but you'd never think about using us again. That would fly in the face of our business model. So again, the reality is, are you going to get some bad seeds in the real estate industry? Absolutely. And I will apologize for them in advance. But most of the time, you're going to get an agent who truly does care, who is going to go to bat for you, who's going to answer your calls late at night, early in the morning, and work through things with you and go through the emotional ride that this is. But it doesn't benefit us to take the shortcut with you and really screw you over and have you undersell your house just so we can get paid on it. Because again, that's not going to go well for us in the future. You're not going to advocate for us to your neighbors or to your friends. So it really does benefit us to make it a win-win, mutually beneficial relationship. Because I know for me, I'm looking for long-term clients, and if I am not taking good care of them during the process on the purchase or listing side, then I'm not going to get their referrals or their business in the future. And for me, that's vital. That's the lifeblood for me. And most of the agents that I deal with within these walls have built a similar business model. So I just want to say that too, that I understand that there's some bad experiences, or there's a bad mantra around some agents, or they are money hungry, or they just want to get paid. I understand that, but that is definitely not how we operate, and I think most agents actually don't operate that way.
Yeah,
so is there a small percentage? Yes.
Well, I mean, we're in this business to make a living. No two ways about it. But our financial needs don't rule our decision-making process. And what I mean by that is we're not going to push you into a deal just so that we can get paid. We're more concerned about you guys and stressing for you guys to make happy lifetime customers. We've got people selling houses to folks. Their kids are this tall when I first sold the parents a house, and now they're grown up and have kids that tall. So the proof is in the pudding. We do actually care about what we're doing here and the folks that we're working with.
Thank you guys first for taking the time out of your guys' day. Both of these men are very, very busy. Thank you guys for watching. Every Friday I do these videos. I hope you will all learn something. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, even if you're not watching live, or direct message me. I literally have an office filled with people that can answer the questions if I can. The bottom line is, realtors care about their clients. We care about the market. We care about real estate. And we care about people, and that's what the point is. And I hear so much people saying that we don't. We're only chasing a dollar. We're not. Trust me, I'm broke. So, thank you guys very much. Have a great weekend, and be safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay.
You guys did. Thank you so much, Marty. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lincoln.
Did we cover what we needed to?
You did. You guys did a great job. Way
We don't-
better than my plan was.
We don't need
honestly.
to take two?
No, not at all. It was
Retakes?
awesome. It really was.
Now you might want to put a stunt double in for me.
No,
Airbrush us out?
you did. You really did great.
Audio only?
You really did.
All right, bud.
Thank you so much.
Are these Lincolns or yours?
Those are